Welcome to the book reading program of 3ABN Australia Radio. Does your faith need a boost? Do you think that miracles only happened in Bible times? Think again. Compiled by Remnant Publications, the book Get Ready for a Miracle recounts true stories that prove that when we step out in faith, God displays His power in undeniable ways. Here is our reader, Harold Harker.
This story is entitled Surrounded by AK47s. 1 Samuel 1:27 and 28 reads, "For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition which I asked of him. Therefore I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he shall be lent to the Lord." So they worshipped the Lord there. Our family was going back to the Congo after a furlough in the United States. After we arrived in Nairobi, Kathy and the kids travelled home to Lubumbashi. Meanwhile, I flew to South Africa, where I bought a Peugeot 504 and loaded it up full of supplies to take home. It was a Thursday, and I wanted to drive all the way across Botswana that day and take the ferry across the river into Zambia that night. It was about 600 miles, that's 1,000 kilometres, of extremely rough road. On Friday, I planned to drive the rest of the way home. It was normally a 4-day trip, but I thought I could make it in 2 days. I drove as fast as I could. I even broke a shock on my new car because the road was so rough. I thought the ferry closed at 6, but when I arrived, I discovered that it had closed at 5. "You'll have to stay somewhere around here," they told me. So I found a village nearby and asked the chief, "Can I sleep here?" "Oh, sure, you can sleep here," he said. That evening, I talked to many of the people in the village and prayed with them. I listened to some sermon tapes. Finally, I got back in my car, laid the seat down, and went fast asleep. Probably an hour or an hour and a half later, a noise awakened me. I looked around and saw soldiers standing around my car. I got outside. There were 20 plus soldiers surrounding my car, all holding AK-47s pointed at me. "Who are you?" they demanded. I told them that I was an American missionary. I just came back from the United States and I'm taking the car back to where I live in the Congo. I just couldn't get across the ferry last night. The soldiers weren't satisfied and kept questioning me. Because the war for Rhodesian independence was going on at the time, as a white person, I was suspect. One of them asked, "Are you from South Africa?" "No, I'm an American. I'll show you my passport. Let me get it." I turned to get my passport, and all of a sudden the captain screamed, "Don't move!" All the AK-47s clicked, and the soldiers all put bullets in their chambers and cocked them. I thought I was dead. I froze. He repeated, "Don't move!" I just stood there motionless. Finally, the captain said, "Okay, gently get your passport." After I handed the passport to him, he said, "Follow us." I followed the soldiers back to the police station, where the captain told me I was free to go. The next day, I drove on, thankful that God had spared my life. Several years went by. Our missionary experience had ended, and we were back in the United States. At that time, I would record my sermons on cassette tapes and send them to my parents each week. They always listened to my sermons faithfully. In one of them, I told this story about the AK-47s. At Christmas time, when we were in Oklahoma visiting my parents, Mother said, "Tell me about that story you told in your sermon, the one about the AK47s and those soldiers around you." So I told her the story again, and she asked, "When was that?" I thought a bit and figured out the exact date. Then Mother told me her story. The same night that the soldiers confronted me. It was a few hours earlier in the US because of the time difference. Mother was asleep in her bed. Suddenly, she woke up with the conviction that something was wrong. She told me I looked out the window, and it was as if I was looking toward Lubumbashi, where you lived. I just could see it. I knew that you were in great danger and were about to be killed. I got on my knees, and for 3 hours I prayed and cried and prayed and cried. Finally, I felt you were all right. Neither one of us knew until several years later what the other was experiencing at that moment. I'm sure I am alive today because of my mother's prayers. A reflection associated with this story comes from Patriarchs and Prophets, page 243. The mother's earnest prayers had committed her child to the care of God, and angels, unseen, hovered above his lowly resting place. Angels directed Pharaoh's daughter thither. Her curiosity was excited by the little basket, and as she looked upon the beautiful child within, she read the story at a glance. The tears of the babe awakened her compassion, and her sympathies went out to the unknown mother who had resorted to this means to preserve the life of her precious little one. She determined that he should be saved. She would adopt him as her own. This story, surrounded by AK47s, was written by Elder Duane McKey, Vice President for Evangelism and Ministerial Director for the Southwestern Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. Early in their career, he and his wife Kathy served as missionaries in Africa.
You've been listening to the book reading program by 3ABN Australia Radio, featuring Get Ready for a Miracle. For more information about this book, visit remnantpublications.com.